Um, So God willing, I'm going to talk a little bit about the chemical properties of iron and the mathematical miracle that, the details that God has given to us in the Sura. God has given us numerous proofs in the Quran. One of God's proofs is what I'm going to share with you guys tonight, God willing. It's actually quite ironic that I was giving the khutbah about iron, and I was preparing for my presentation and excited about it and everything, and wanted to dress well and everything, and I realized that the iron in my room was not working. So I had to call room service and tell them my iron was not working. So they got me another iron, so now I have 2 irons if anybody needs one. Ultimately, I found out that the reason why it wasn't working was because I didn't plug it in. So God tells us in Surah 41:53 about His proofs. We will show them our proofs in the horizons and within themselves until they realize that this is the truth. Is your Lord not sufficient as a witness of all things? If you see the footnote for this verse, it states that the distinct Arabic letters that compose this verse are 19, and their geometrical values add up to 1387, or 19 times 73. This great prophecy, together with 933, 48:28, 61:9, and 110 verse 2, inform us that the whole world is destined to accept the Quran as God's unaltered message. Appendix 38. So God is telling us in this verse that He will continue to show us proofs, and as we can see, mashallah, the miracle never stops. We saw so many great presentations, as Mike put it, so many nice subhanallah moments. So it's perpetual, and God has, definitely shown us that, His promise is the truth. God mentions iron among His proofs in 57:25. Subtitle Iron, the most useful metal. We sent our messengers, supported by clear proofs, and we have sent down to them the scripture and the law, that the people may uphold justice. And we sent down the iron, wherein there is strength, and many benefits for the people. All this in order for God to distinguish those who would support Him and His messengers on faith. God is powerful, almighty. So going back to the introduction of iron, just a little introduction about iron as a symbol element that we find in the periodic table. Iron is referred to with the symbol Fe or Ferm. It's the 6th most abundant element that is found in the universe. It's the 4th most abundant on Earth. The most abundant element by mass of our entire planet, making up 35% of the mass of the Earth as a whole.
Go back to the other slide if you don't mind. Previous one.
I don't mind. Okay. Sorry, you can tell me if I'm going too fast. Okay, so it's the 6th most abundant element in the universe, 4th most abundant on Earth, and the most abundant element by mass of our entire planet, making about 35% of the mass of the Earth as a whole. So, going back to the verse 57:25, God tells us that we sent down the iron. And the key word here to note is sent down. And the word actually used in Arabic is anzalna, translated as sent down, and used for iron in this verse. The literal meaning of the word, which is being physically sent down from the sky. Modern astronomical findings have disclosed that iron was found in our world. Iron that is found in our world has indeed come from giant stars in outer space. And actually, it's not just the the iron that is found on our planet Earth. The iron found in the entire solar system basically comes from outer space. Iron is basically formed at a few 100 million degrees. The iron in the entire solar system comes from outer space. Temperature in the sun is inadequate for the formation of iron. The sun has a surface temperature of 6,000 degrees Celsius and a core temperature of approximately 20 million degrees. Iron can only be formed in much larger stars than the sun, where the temperature reaches a few 100 million degrees. This is a false color image of the sun, in case you guys are wondering what that is. Basically, the way iron is exploded into space is from something known as supernovas or novas. When the amount of iron exceeds a certain level in the star can no longer accommodate it. It eventually explodes in a nova or a supernova. These explosions make it possible for iron to be given off into space. We can see many importances of iron. Like God says, there are many benefits for the people. And it says, it is the accumulation of iron in the center of a star which triggers a supernova explosion and the subsequent scattering of the vital atoms of life throughout the cosmos. So there are many different atoms that, the cosmos needs, and, they're all, given into the universe by these supernovas. One of the importances of iron is the formation of the hydrosphere. Basically, this is a diagram that demonstrates a hydrosphere. And as you can see, there are mountains, and there's rain coming up, and there are mountains condensing and the rain falling down. So this whole cycle is done. The water vapors go up and they collide with the hydrosphere, and then they come down. So this whole cycle is done in the hydrosphere. So it plays a really important role in the formation of this hydrosphere. It was the drawing by gravity of iron atoms to the center of the primeval Earth that generated the heat which caused the initial chemical differentiation of the Earth, the outgassing of the early atmosphere, and ultimately the formation of the hydrosphere. And actually, which brings me to a point that one of my brothers, Brother Makari, actually mentioned, that iron is basically mentioned in Sura 57, which is in the middle. If you look at the order in which the Quran has been placed in the book, it's the 57th Surah, which is in the middle. And praise be to God, that also shows us that most of the iron is actually found in the core of the earth, which is like right in the middle. So that's why God also placed it in 57. Also, I'm sure many of you guys are aware of the Van Allen radiation belts. We see a diagram of Van Allen radiation belts, which are caused by the magnetic field, because the magnetic field is produced by the iron inside the core of the earth. It is molten iron in the center of the earth, which, acting like a gigantic dynamo, generates the earth's magnetic field, which in turn creates the Van Allen radiation belts that shield the earth's surface from destructive, high-energy penetrating cosmic radiation and preserve the crucial ozone layer from cosmic ray destruction. Now, coming out actually of these were more on the physical side, that stuff that you actually read in physics classes, so let's come to biology now. Basically, iron is an essential element for most life on Earth, including us. The control of this necessary but potentially toxic substance is an important part of many aspects of human health and disease. Iron is an essential element for our red blood cells. This is actually a microscopic diagram of red blood cells. They look much like, cereal, but in this picture. But this is a very close look at a red blood cell. So God tells us in 57:27 that about iron that God has placed a lot of strength there. Most of the human body's iron is contained in the red blood cells, hemoglobin. Iron deficiency is the most common cause of anemia, an absolute requirement for most forms of life, including humans and most bacterial species. This is a diagram of a heme molecule. The most important group of iron-binding proteins are the heme molecules. All heme molecules contain iron at their centers. So as you can see, in the middle there is, ferrum, Fe, that's iron, and then you have other elements, and they form the heme molecule, which is a really important part of our human bodies. Humans and most bacteria use variants of heme to carry out reactions and processes that are required for oxidative phosphorylation. The process is the principal source of energy for human cells. Without it, our cells will die. God tells us in the Quran that there are many benefits for the people, besides the fact that God has placed a lot of strength there. And we can see this picture here is actually my cell phone. It's used in making automobiles, making steel, building supports, airplanes, warships, weapons, ships for fishing and trade, say office supplies, manufacturing computer parts and magnetic disks, making insecticides, water purification and sewage treatment, an additive in animal feed, an etching material for engravement, printed circuits, paints and ceramics, rubber purification systems, additive in human and animal food, dyeing of fabrics and leather, a wood preservative, dietary supplement in iron pills, coloring agent in paints, plastics, glass and ceramics, photography, a catalyst in the production of ammonia as an ingredient in fertilizer and herbicide, as a wood preservative, and additive to flour to increase iron levels. There are actually many benefits, but I just, for the sake of time, I just, cut it short to about 19 of them that I thought were probably, most important, worth mentioning. Here's another diagram of a heme molecule. Basically, these heme molecules transport oxygen to all parts of our bodies. Humans also use iron in the hemoglobin of red blood cells in order to transport oxygen from the lungs to the tissues and to export carbon dioxide back to the lungs. And iron is an essential component of myoglobin to store oxygen in muscle cells. The human body needs iron for oxygen transport. That oxygen is required for the production and survival of all cells in our bodies. So human bodies tightly regulate iron absorption and recycling. Now, going back to the mathematics of iron, part of it has to do a lot with the mathematical miracle of the Quran. Iron has an atomic number of 26 because it has 26 protons. You can see in the periodic table, iron is actually an atomic number of 26. The geometrical value for the word iron, Hadeed, is actually 26. You can see we have the 4 initials, and if you look at the geometrical values on the side over here, you add them up and the total is actually 26, which is the atomic number of iron. So well. From the beginning of the surah, the iron, al-Hadeed, till the end of the verse of that surah that refers to iron, the word God is used 26 times. The verse which refers to iron is the 25th verse in the surah al-Hadeed. If we count Bismillah as a numbered verse, then that number is 26. Iron actually has 3 isotopes that are stable and non-radioactive. If you actually look at the geometrical value of al-Hadeed, which means the iron in English, the geometrical value actually totals to 57 instead of 26. So basically 26 refers to iron in general, so all the different isotopes of iron have the number 26 as their atomic number. But the iron, specific kind of iron, actually 57 is one of the isotopes of iron.
It's going to start there.
So these are the 3 stable isotopes, as you can see in the diagram in the table over here. And so the number of neutrons differ in the isotopes. For those of you who are not too familiar with chemistry or flunked the chemistry class, actually it has a different number of neutrons, but the same number of protons, but it's the same element, so they are referred to as isotopes, and they exist in nature. So these are actually the only three isotopes that exist in nature for iron, and they're not radioactive and they're completely stable. This surah has a total of 30 verses, along with the unnumbered Bismillah. This number is equal to the neutron numbers of another isotope of iron, which is 26, which refers to 26. So it has about 30. 30 is the number of neutrons that is found in the first one. This first one over here, it has 30 neutrons, as you can see over here, and this surah has a total of 30 verses. So God points out to us about one isotope of iron here. The geometrical value of the iron, or al-Hadeed, is 57, which is one of the isotopes of iron. And 57 is one of the isotopes of iron. As you can see, 26 and then 31, so that's 57. So God talks about one isotope of iron over here. The surah iron. The surah iron Hadeed is actually the 58th surah from the end of the Quran. That is another isotope of iron. 26 plus 32 equals 58. The number of times the word Allah or God in this surah is mentioned is also 32, which gives a number of neutrons in this isotope. It's iron. So this is actually a picture I found on the internet on one of the places where they extract iron. You can see they're found in these rocks and minerals, and the color of the water is actually coming from the iron ore that is found in there. The total number of times where God is mentioned from the beginning of the Quran to the end of this surah is actually 2,449. And if we add 2 plus 4 plus 4 plus 9, we get a total of 19. So, review of the verse again. 57:25. God willing, I'm going to read it again. We sent our messengers supported by clear proofs, and we sent down to them the iron, we sent to them the scripture and the law, that the people may uphold justice. And we sent down the iron, wherein there is strength, and many benefits for the people. All this in order for God to distinguish those who would support Him as messengers on faith. God is powerful, almighty. Praise be to God, Lord of the universe. The second part that I wanted to talk about was actually about the mathematical miracle. Basically, some of the details are referred to Surah Rahman. One day I was just driving, listening to the Surah, and I just started thinking about why God mentions, the statement that we find in the Surah, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, which means, which of your Lord's marvels can you deny? And actually, if you look at the pattern in which it occurs in the Quran, there's actually 12 verses that, God talks about something else, and then right after that, 13th verse, God says, which of your Lord's marvels can you deny? And then after those 12 verses, when God mentions the statement, then it occurs after every one or two verses, like, there is a specific sequence. So here I put all the numbers of all the surahs where God mentions the statement in this chapter 55, which of your Lord's marvels can you deny? So we have 13, 16, so there's actually 12 surahs first, and there's no mention of it. And then if you see after that, there are two verses in the middle, and then God mentions that again, and then there's one verse that says something else, and then there's 18th verse that says the same thing, and then there are two verses. So there's an intriguing thing for me, because I would think that if God just used it for it to say rhyme with each other, it would be a regular interval, or if it was supposed to be like in a song, there has to be a pattern, that you could recognize for a song. But this was the reason why, I decided to look into it in a little more detail. If we add the number of digits for these numbers that we just saw, we see that it's actually 38 totals to 38. So basically, there was 12 verses where it was not mentioned, and then it was mentioned, and then after that there were two verses, and then after that it was mentioned again, and then one. So I put all those numbers, and I added the digits of those numbers, and it actually equals to 38. And it's interesting because, for once, it's a multiple of 19. But the fact that it's 19 times 2, if we recall, the only number besides 1 that God refers to in the surah is 2, one for the jinns, one for the humans. They're fruits, each one of them, there are two kinds, one for the jinns, one for the humans. So I was really happy to see that. Praise be to God. Also, if we write these numbers from right to left and add the surah number to it, we get this number that we see here on the screen, which is also a multiple of 19. So basically, we're writing it from left to right. This is a long number, but it couldn't fit on this line, so it truncated it over here. But basically, we write it from left, basically from right to left. So we write 12, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, and then 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1. So we write it, and then so this number that we have, we add the number of the surah to it, which is 55, and we get a number which is also a multiple of 19. So, if you look at the actual statement where God says, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, so here in this table we actually have the letters. If you count these letters, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, you count each of them, you can see there are exactly 19 letters. Actually, in this chart over here, you see the geometrical values of each of the alphabets. So if you want to look at it, compare it to the actual chart. What I did here is I put the Arabic initials here, and then here's a number of the letter in the order that it occurs in the Quran, so they're positioned by its number. And then over here, we have the geometrical values of each of these initials. So for F, there's 80, for B, there's 2, and so forth. So if you actually write the number of the letter in that verse, the number of letter of that verse, followed by its geometrical value, this is what we get. So we write 1, and then 80, and 2, and then 2, and then 3, 1, and so forth. So we get this long number over here. And this number is also a multiple of 19. Thank you very much.
Mom, I don't know how to shut.
Inshallah, prayer will be very shortly, so please do wudu and then get right back here for prayer as quickly as you can, please.
He's still recording. It's already recorded. It's recording now.